It's been about 4 months since the official release date of Halo Infinite, which is December 8th. The campaign has been something that I can say I've been waiting for since about the 7th grade. You can go back to my old videos and literally see how much I've spoken about this game leading up to its official release date. When Halo was announced to be delayed into 2021, I honestly didn't know what to think. I mean, of course I wanted a polished game, who wouldn't? But it's been 5 years and almost 6 at that time since Halo 5. After finally playing the game, I've collected a bunch of thoughts. In general, I'm happy to say that the game was pretty polished, at least in the context of the campaign, but my thoughts are a lot deeper than that. So, today I'd like to share my official thoughts on the brand new Halo and dive into the goods and bads. There's a lot to talk about, so I'd like to just start with the promotional stuff and then the multiplayer, since I do have a bit more thoughts this time around. Not only that, but they have added a little bit more since the last video, but not really much. Now, Halo was announced back at E3 in 2018 with a pretty cool trailer, pretty much just showing the impressive new visuals with their new slipspace engine. It wasn't really much besides just showing, hey, a new mainline Halo game is on its way, so stay tuned. But the next year they showed the infamous Discover Hope trailer. This was really the trailer that set it off for me, since the game looked amazing. The emotion was so powerful, and the story looked promising. It really felt like the official return of Master Chief. Every time 343 had put something out to advertise the game, it was just so exciting. Now, when I heard the news that Joe Staten had joined 343 for the development of the game, I almost yelled because of how excited I was. Now, when the campaign reveal was shown, there were obviously mixed opinions. This is where the promotion and build-up sort of took a turn for the worse in my opinion. Not only was there a ton of backlash, but they also decided to delay the game. Now, it was definitely the better choice, but at the time it was pretty devastating. This had really ruined 343's plans because once the delay happened, they really ran out of promotional stuff, so they couldn't really do much at that point. Eventually they had figured it all out, but it was a rough couple months for them. Now, over time, they had a lot more to show off, and you could really see the improvement in the game. I think as a whole, the promotion for this game was phenomenal, and in the end, I'm glad they delayed it. But now we can finally move on to the next thing. Now, I've obviously already put out a video for the multiplayer that was released early, and I had a lot of fun. If you want to watch that, I can put a link in the description, but if you don't plan on watching, there was a playlist with Slayer, Oddball, Stronghold, and Capture the Flag all together. It's stupid because not all these people want to play objective-oriented modes and just want to shoot and kill. It also got pretty repetitive since they were missing plenty of modes, and I'm talking about main core modes like Infected, SWAT, Griffball, Fiesta, and so many more. Now, around December 8th, I'm not too sure on the specific date, there was an update that added a Team Slayer and a SWAT mode. Now, this was definitely a breath of fresh air. There wasn't really much to do leading up to that point, and it was complete RNG on which mode you'd get. They had also added events like Attrition, that was a mode where your team had a set amount of lives and you had to kill the enemies before you ran out of your own lives. And then of course Fiesta. Now, both of the events had their own mini battle passes and gave you the opportunity to unlock a bunch of new things, so I really enjoyed it. There was also a Christmas event, so that's cool as well. Now, at the time of the first Halo video, I didn't have much experience on the multiplayer. I believe about a day or so. Now that I have about 5 or 6 days, I do have a few more things in mind about 2 weapons in particular. But before I bring up those, I'd like to quickly talk about grenades in Halo Infinite. In my opinion, the grenades are the biggest problem in the game, or at least as far as the multiplayer goes. Now we could talk about multiple things: the ease of access, spamming 4 types of grenades, being capable of holding 4 of them, and so on. And I'm not even bringing up the fact that they're actually really broken. It's just sad how I die to grenades just as much as I die to guns in a shooter game. I really want to talk about the ease of access because that's honestly the biggest out of the other problems. Now, there are so many types of grenades, and just grenades in general scattered all over the map, and the respawn rates are incredibly fast too. And you see, it doesn't help when you can pick up grenades off of dead players too. Grenades are being thrown in your direction at almost all times, and it's even worse during a mode like Strongholds or Oddball. If 343 can slow down the spawn rates and also maybe even slightly nerf them, I think the overall multiplayer experience would be so much better. We can now discuss the two main issues in relation to guns, the AR and the BR. The AR, in my opinion, is actually way too broken, especially if you're comparing it to the other Halo games. With the ease of access and ease of use, it shouldn't even be possible to beat the shotgun from close to mid-range when it most definitely can in this game. The gun doesn't even give precision weapons a chance to compete in a lot of situations, which kind of promotes an unhealthy playstyle by having the player positioning himself into the easiest and campiest gunfights. The battle rifle is the next gun on my list, and, well, it's broken. Now, we have to remember that this gun is your starting weapon in competitive, so it should be without a doubt a weapon that just takes skill, right? It does, but only partially, especially in the current state of the game. The battle rifle has heavy hit scan issues. With how the recoil and bloom works, chest and elbow shots would most of the time register as headshots. I think it's pretty self-explanatory in why it's become an issue, and it takes away so much skill from the gun and honestly promotes not aiming for the head in a way. I'm not a game developer in any way at all, so I'm not going to act like I know what to do in order to fix this issue, or even act like I know exactly what I'm talking about. But the AR can start with a nerf, and the BR could possibly get some genuine fixes, especially with how its shots register. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for the multiplayer for now. If there are updates in the future, I guess I could make another video on them. But yeah, that's pretty much all, and now we're gonna move on to the campaign. If it isn't obvious enough, this part will contain spoilers for the main story. I'm not too positive on how much I'm going to talk about it, but I feel as if I might as well bring that up just in case. Now, back when I was talking about my excitement for this game, I, majority of the time, was really referring to the campaign. I was so curious on how they would follow up to Halo 5, since, 343 didn't really have big shoes to fill, and the bar was set so low. So, after 6 years, we're at least expecting a step in the right direction. Well, I'm happy to say that 343 delivered that without a doubt. This campaign is by far better than both Halo 4 and 5, and is 343's best interpretation of Halo to date. The game starts off with a cutscene of Master Chief and the UNSC battling the Banished right on the Infinity. We see Master Chief take out Jackals and other enemies when Atriox shows up and has a mini fight sequence with him. This cutscene actually demonstrates pretty well that the Master Chief has great agility and strength, unlike we've ever seen. He even lands a couple good hits on Atriox up until Atriox kinda bodies him. I feel like the cutscene started off the game pretty well because it gives us some context on when it takes place and shows that the Banished are a real threat and should be taken seriously. I also think that it showed how cool Atriox is, and I honestly can't wait to see him later on in the game. Atriox is dead! Huh? We'll get back to this part later on. Halo Infinite's stories had some lows, but was overall pretty solid in my opinion. I mean, it had a very similar formula to CE, where Chief was on the ring taking out hordes and hordes of enemies while uncovering more about the rings, but in this case he's uncovering what happened with the battle between the UNSC and the Banished. We haven't been on one of these rings properly since about Halo 2. In Halo 3 you're on one of the incomplete rings, but besides that, it's been a while. I guess you could technically also include Halo Wars 2, but I personally don't. It's also pretty weird since Cortana isn't there with us at all in this game. We'll save that for later, but instead, we have a new AI codenamed The Weapon, who was honestly pretty cool. One thing that is incredibly done are the characters in this game. They're all unique with a great personality and really good dialogue. I was honestly pretty impressed with that. One of the cutscenes in this game actually made me tear up just because of how powerful it was, so I guess I could play a small clip just to show it off.
I'm not a pilot! I'm not even a soldier, a marine! I'm a fraud. I stole that pelican. Have you ever been scared? So scared that you... I'm worthless. You should leave me here with the rest of the carpets.
We all fail. We all make mistakes. It's what makes us human.
I'm sorry, Chief, but how have you ever failed?
I failed her. I will not fail you.
You know, you get to see a beautiful dynamic between these two characters in this clip, and it doesn't even stop there. You see more and more of it throughout the game, and you realize how different the two are. Echo 16 is a person who just wants to go home and leave the ring. He has no motivation to stay there, while Chief needs to finish the fight and stop the Banished before it's too late. Echo 216 is kind of that relatable character in this game. You know, he's a normal human being who's scared, and you kind of feel for him at this point. The narrative of the overall story is kind of weird to me. This is something I want to point out because there are almost no times in the game where the focus isn't on the Chief. Now, it sounds really stupid to complain about it since that's exactly the reason why Halo 5 was hated, but maybe we got a little too much Chief somehow. They could have definitely used some moments to maybe give more screen time to the Banished or maybe other characters, because I know this might be a hot take, but in my opinion, I believe Spartan Locke should have been in this game, absolutely. You know, I don't completely despise the character, but I don't think he should be a main character. That's definitely what ticked a bunch of people off when Halo 5 happened, but I don't really see a reason to why he couldn't have been a side character. No matter how much we hated the previous game, we can't sit here and act like nothing ever happened, so I don't really like how they try to overshadow it completely. As the story went on, I couldn't really help but wonder where Fireteam Osiris was. I mean, the least they could have done was add someone from Blue Team or even Arbiter to make an appearance. I love Chief. Should he be the main character? Absolutely, but it almost got annoying when the camera never really left his side. We didn't really get that many cinematic cutscenes either, so that didn't really help. I think that's why I appreciate Halo 2 so much. There were multiple narratives carrying the same story, and it just worked and blended so well together. Infinite is a live service game, and I've heard countless times that there would be future DLC or just more campaigns being added to the game down the line, which is pretty much why I don't want to critique this too much. You know, it could just be that they're spacing all of the crazy stuff out so they can all thrive in their own way. But giving Cortana an off-screen death is pretty stupid when you think about it. You know, this is a character who has been with us since the beginning of the story, so I found it pretty stupid. Same with how they were hyping up Atriox and building his arc for a couple years now just to find out that he dies. But we do find out at the end of the game that he is alive, so we are going to see him in the future. Now, with Atriox supposedly dead, the Banished had a new leader who's called Eshram. Now, face value, he's alright, nothing really too crazy, but in comparison to Atriox, he's a little bit underwhelming. He didn't have any build-up as a character like Atriox, and he was all talk for the majority of the game. Like, he would literally threaten Chief all game, but just send more brutes and mini-bosses after him. I honestly don't have much to say about him. By no means was he terrible, but it was a little lackluster, especially after the fact that we all wanted to see Atriox. But on the bright side, his boss fight was actually pretty fun to me. I actually enjoyed it a lot, since it makes the player use the resources around him to outplay him. But yeah, that pretty much sums up everything I have to say for the actual story. I mean, I enjoyed it and thought it was pretty good for the most part, but it definitely left more to be desired. But as I already mentioned, the fact that it's a live service game, I don't want to completely bash it because I'm sure that they're going to add a lot more to it. Well, now that we've covered the main story part, I can actually talk about the map, the gameplay, the visuals, the missions, etc. I'd like to start with the gameplay first. Now, as I've previously mentioned, the gameplay is obviously really good in this game without a doubt. I've already spoken about it, but besides some flaws, it's truly one of the best when it comes to the sheer gameplay. Some guns that are found useless in multiplayer actually seem really good in the campaign, and I'm mainly talking about the Pulse Cannon, the Ravager, and Commando. You have a decent variety of equipment, but to be completely honest, all you really use is the grapple hook in the campaign. Once upgraded, it stuns enemies and has a very short cooldown. Not only that, but it helps you immensely when it comes to traveling around a huge map in odd terrains. And this pretty much leads into my next point when I talk about the open world. The map itself is actually pretty impressive for the most part, and it just shows the improvement from last year's showcase. There's so much from Forerunner structures and caves to the beautiful mountains and abandoned ships. Now, personally, I would have liked to have seen more variety in biomes since it was slightly repetitive after a while. Perhaps, you know, a snowy area or a sandy area, but regardless, I did enjoy it. I've spent literally hours on end playing campaign, flying around in a wasp, just searching for the collectibles and other side missions. Exploring the map is pretty rewarding because there's so much to do and see. I love how you can fast travel thanks to the fobs that are scattered around the map, and with these fobs you could spawn a bunch of weapons, vehicles, and even get a bunch of marines together once you save them in the side missions. So the open worldish aspect is really cool in this game, but still not as good as Halo 1 in my opinion. Now we obviously know Halo 1 had repetitive and identical areas back to back, but it had more of an overall variety with the snowy and beach-like areas. Infinite didn't really have any identical locations in specific, but they were all pretty, generally similar, so it evens out. Overall, the map was cool. It had plenty of Easter eggs scattered around, but it could have used more variety. The last cool thing I'd love to talk about is the amazing music cues in specific locations. Now, you might not be fully aware of what I'm talking about, so I'll just pull up a quick example or two. I mean, realistically, there's nothing too crazy about it, but personally, it's something I appreciate a lot because they knew the perfect times to cue up music and it just worked out so well. It would always be somewhere high up or at a spot with a breathtaking view, so I would always just stand there taking it in for a couple of seconds. But speaking of that, playing through the game made me realize so much about its sound effects and soundtrack. Almost every sound in this game is either very unique or it is remade from a past Halo game, but perfected. Another sound I'd really love to hear were the ones you'd hear when finding an armor coating or a Spartan core. I'll play another example just to explain what I'm really referring to here. So yeah, we can even talk about the weapon sound effects too, but that's only if I really wanted to make this video extra long. But if you've played the game, I think you'd understand. Now, the actual soundtrack, and although it might sound crazy, I think that it has the best one in the entire series yet. Now, when I say this, I'm still appreciating the past soundtracks a lot, since, a lot of these songs in Infinite were remade versions of previous songs, but man, it was amazing. The video should contain strictly Halo Infinite tracks, so it should give you a feel of what I'm really talking about here. But, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say when it comes to the campaign. I thought it was a pretty good story overall, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. If they could implement more map variety and, amp up the intensity when it comes to the story, I think the next parts of the campaign will be perfect. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I took a whole month or two off of writing this video, and the state of the game is definitely a little different. In conclusion, Halo Infinite isn't perfect. In fact, I think it's very far from that. But what I can say is that it's a step in the right direction. Everyone's rooting for this game, and I hope nothing but the best for it. Season 2 needs to be an absolute hit, or else the game could be in big trouble, as it already kinda is. Many people are saying that the game is dead, but personally, I completely disagree. I think its viewership is decaying, although when it comes to the actual player count, I still think there's a bunch of people playing the game. Thing is, they won't be playing much longer unless change does happen. So 2 new maps, a couple of new modes, and a mid-season update. It's not really too promising, especially for a 6-month-long season. But I mean, at this current state, we really just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best when it comes to the next couple months of the game. They did release a roadmap. I'll put that up on the screen right now. And, I don't really know how I personally feel about it too much yet. We're really missing a lot of content here. And it's not even that I necessarily think 343 is doing nothing. I can tell that, they're really short on staff and they're trying their best. So that's why I'm not really going to bash them much. I definitely think that they need more people to work on the game. They seem really short-staffed for a big game like this, especially, for a free game. There's a lot of people tuning in constantly, so, you really need to keep the players interested, I guess, to say the least. But yeah, anyways, if you did make it to the end of the video and you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. You know, you can maybe leave a comment or subscribe. I do appreciate all sorts of feedback. I do also want to apologize for not uploading for a good 2 months again. You know, life isn't easy, I guess, but no more excuses. And I'm also going to stop making promises on when my next upload is going to be, as I don't really want to rush myself into creating content and then also getting burnt out at the same time. So yeah, anyways, until the next one, see ya.